Our program now. But first, I would like to give some recognition to a couple of our corporate members, particularly DuPont, who donated quite a lot to help us with this dinner. Sponsors who helped us with our cocktail hors d'oeuvres, and they were Appalachian Hardwood Manufacturing Incorporated, Hardwood Manufacturing Association, and Hardwood Plywood Manufacturing Association. A couple more people I would like to recognize. One is Elaine Cohen, who has, each year it seems, put together a fantastic program. And also Ron Sullenleiter, who is our awards chairman and who worked very hard on our plaque and on our recipient and the program with him. One more that some of you may not be very aware of is we have a den mother who resides at headquarters, and she is fantastic. She knows a lot about us, and she handles all our calls, and just does a wonderful job for us. And I would like to thank you, Judy. These are all your dinner tickets, and I believe you all have your receipt with your number. I see there's one in here, a receipt. Now, I don't know what happened with that one. But furniture today has been very gracious and has offered a one-year free subscription to us to use as a door prize tonight. So what we would like to do is ask our honored guest if he would pick out a ticket to see who our winner would be. He has his number memorized already, so he's looking for that ticket. Can't look at them though.
No, that's not the
I don't think we can. Just one I don't think I should.
Somebody jumped through the car that you're there.
The wrong end.
And the winner is number 1, 5, 4.
Steve Bond.
Feel good? Is this a, you know,
Yes.
can't use this one?
Everybody was asleep.
Joanna, what we'll do is I will give your name to the person that is representing the magazine. And do you get that magazine now? Okay, it will be added onto your next subscription. of our charter members, would like to introduce our honored guest tonight. He is an old friend of Mr. Wormley's. Milo?
And you can applaud he who gets to introduce you. That'll give you an idea of how honored we are to have you here. It occurred to me that Ed Wormley does us a greater honor than we can possibly do him. As proud as I am personally of ASFD and this program of honoring important designers, yet I think at Ed Wormley we have somebody so outstanding, I don't want to embarrass you, so outstanding that indeed he does us the greater honor. One other thing I might mention, I didn't expect Ed, who I haven't seen for 21 years, to still be so handsome. And my wife Carol was the first to point that out. Lincoln Cohen said it too, and also Jackie, and Ed, you can have your pick. Well, to talk about my connection with Ed, I'd have to go back a ways, as you might expect. In the Arts Center where I went to school in Los Angeles, they tried to give us Charles Eames and George Nelson as our supreme heroes, even as gods, if you will. But it soon became clear to me as I got into the real world of furniture design that at least in the 20s and the 30s, men like Paul Frankel, Norman Balgettis, and Gilbert Rhodey had been the real producers in the 20s and 30s. And now in the post-war era, which I was part of, just graduating from design school, a new star came into view. And of course you guessed who that was. It was Ed Wormley. After I had gotten a modest start in California, I thought it was time to try for the East, where the bigger action was, and I rented a good-looking, expensive-looking overcoat from a good friend of mine, ate peanut butter sandwiches, finally got to Chicago, and I was wandering around in the merchandise market, just feeling overwhelmed and about ready to go back to California. I was really bewildered by it all seemed so big. It was my first market, it was 1951, and I bumped into an editor for Living for Young Homemakers. That was the equivalent in those days of Cosmopolitan Living today. And she suggested that I meet Ed Wormley and seek counsel from him. But he's so famous, he won't have time for me, I said. But you've already guessed it, he did have time. He spent about 3 hours, I don't know if you even remember this, about 3 hours in the showroom, which was the most beautiful showroom I'd ever seen, the Dunbar showroom, giving me practical tips. I think I could almost list them still, on how you really become a practicing furniture designer, not someone who designs a chair now and then. And he gave me so much self-confidence because of that one period, just one day, of giving me that kind of help, of being so accessible, so kind, that I think that had an inestimable value to me throughout my work in the future years. Shortly thereafter, 2 or 3 years later, I tied in with Thayer Coggin, and Thayer Coggin was in awe of the Dunbar showroom at Ed Wormley, and when I said to Thayer on his first trip to merchandise market, come on, let's go see Ed. We can get in the showroom, he'll let us. Thayer wouldn't believe me. But we got in, and all I had to say to the receptionist was we're friends of Ed Wormley. Now, our paths crossed in several other ways. Ed, as you probably know, and I think he's going to allude to this tonight in his presentation, did the first really important coordinated line in contemporary idiom for Drexel. It's called precedent, and indeed it did establish a precedent. A couple years later, I was invited to to do the next one. And they had this fondness for alliteration, and so they called it perspective. It soon became nicknamed perspiration. It wasn't nearly as successful as Ed's precedent group. The things that I admired the most about Ed's work was his restraint, a classic understatement, grace, though there was innovative work. There was always a dignity that I wanted to emulate. And I was going to try to write a kind of a definitive description, if you will, of what I feel Ed Wormley has given to us as principles to follow in contemporary furniture design, but something came to my attention which put it all so well that I'd rather read from that. Now, oddly enough, it's from the Playboy magazine. I've never read it myself, but I understand it's famous for good literature as well as other things. I don't think I'll have time to read it all, but I want to pick out a couple of paragraphs. This is on the cover of this, rather the front piece of this article. There are pictures in 1961 of the leading name designers, George Nelson on the left, Ed Wormley, Ariel Sirman, Harry Vittoria, Charles Eames, and Jens Grissom. And this very excellent writer sums up what all of these designers do, but what they have contributed. But then he ends his article with this long, much longer than the others, commentary about Ed's work. But it is the figure of Edward Wormley that best epitomizes designs for living in the modern movement. Wormley designs furniture, heart and soul, for its relationship to other elements of an interior, as befits the interior designer that he also is, and for the comfort, dignity, and sense of security of human beings. Wormley imagines his furniture inextricably involved in domestic incidents, and occasionally even titles a piece for a specific scene. The table-tate sofa, Mr. and Mrs. chairs, similar in design but scaled to their namesakes, the listen-to-me couch, a slender, undulating chaise for the master bedroom to which a child may be summoned for family conference. The revolving chair, and he mentioned several other things which have been given names. And for me, this was always an appropriate way to say this is not museum furniture. This is furniture for real use by real human beings. And a little later in this article, Wormley's style cannot be summed up in a few vivid adjectives. It does not reside in signature earmarks. Rather, it arises from his expressive handling of a few eternal aesthetic ingredients, proportion, scale, and detail. The relation of the tabletop's thickness to the thickness of the legs, the reaction of a curved chair back to the angle of the legs, the apt accent applied only when it adds life to the total design, never for its own sake. Then the final quote that I will give you, there are those, and some avant-garde designers among them, who believe Wormley's understated, sympathetic furniture will enjoy favor long after more dramatic, more scintillating modern designs have passed into the stage of old-fashioned curiosities, which seems a certain fate for many of them. There's a very recent comment in the present November issue of House Beautiful, among the design visionaries that they quote or comment about. We have one here at Wormley. This is a quote from Ed, a lot of early modern furniture was so sparely designed that it wasn't comfortable to sit on for very long. Even Eames called some of the chairs, there are copies of this over here. Eames was very blunt about this. Anyhow, the point was that they don't always fit people's frames. And it went with other things. so people could move towards modernity without throwing out what they had. I liked the Valhalla designs, but they wore their social significance on their sleeves, as if each chair were a masterpiece that would replace everything that had gone before. There's so much more I would like to say. As I mentioned, Ed Wormley does us the greatest honor. This is a list of the awards and honors that he's received. There are copies of that on the table over here with the chair that Dunbar sent down. And there are also copies of his personal biography that I think you'll find very interesting. But I want to give most of the time to Ed, so I'll shut up. But again, in a very personal sense, I want to thank you for the help you gave me. And I hope that's a lesson to all of us. There are always new designers coming in the field, and they need our help. Thank you.
Well, I'm afraid of what I'm going to say after Milo said so many nice things. It may seem like I've gone off on an egocentric trip. Not that that's unaccustomed. But I'm grateful for his notes of appreciation and of your hospitality and of Elaine's careful guardianship. And I'll begin forthwith a few remarks. I'm honored to have been asked here for this evening, but I'll start way, way back. A lifelong friend, also named Edward, whom I met when we were 6, by 13 wanted to become an architect. I, imagine, had already decided I would be an interior decorator. When at 29, and I knew better, I was in my 6th year with Dunbar. I was invited to attend the national conference of the American Institute of Decorators, where, without prior notice, I was acclaimed, as they put it, a member. I had entered what later became the ASFD, when they began to call themselves interior designers, by the back door, you might say. I was already a founder member of ADS, which means American Designer Society, before it merged with SID, the Society of Interior Designers, a New York organization, to form IDSA. These letters get all mixed up. Meanwhile,
No.
not yet.
No.
No. Who's doing that? Stop that. Meanwhile, the other Edward, as the assistant head of the journalism department at the University of Georgia, had early there founded and was head of the drama department and designed a fine theater. A decade later, a captain in the Army Corps of Special Services, he found himself in Greenland, designing, producing, and directing a weekly theater review for several thousand GIs, who were each allowed 2 bottles of 3.2 beer a week. In the music hall hangout Ed had created out of a disused PX on the base. Both lengthy sidewalls were treated as bars. Dry ones, of course, although the 4 officers' clubs at the base had real ones. Their empties had been salvaged from the officers' trash and decorated the overbars of Ed's nightclub, one of which displayed a gigantic mural inspired by Goya's celebrated painting of a Spanish duchess, the unclothed one of the 2 he did. called the Grand Maha, never seen by his noble sitter's husband, of course, who had commissioned only one. The one in Greenland was dubbed Whistler's sister. Ed Krause returned from Greenland at the end of World War II unharmed, and shortly after became my chief designer associate in Manhattan. After nearly a quarter century, we closed our office at the end of '67. He one time rewrote my biographic blurb to begin. Edward W. was first heard to bellow his dismay at the world at the world 15 minutes before midnight on New Year's Eve, 1907. He was celebrating his birth 2 weeks late. Another time I returned from out of town to find my inexcusably cluttered apartment festooned with gigantic sales banners and large price tags bearing his unmistakable graphics attached to every single item. From the above birth announcement, you will have deduced that on this New Year's Eve, I shall enter my 80th year, although that will only make me 79. So I figure that this entitles me, as so many ancient and mistaken predecessors have found out, to stand here and advise or admonish my juniors, who combined add up to almost everybody. Some of you may remember and be reminded of the stand-up comedian who billed himself as Professor Corey, the world's greatest authority. So, in your clients' and employers' yards or campuses, you have long ago learned that the hallowed bottom line decrees that your nascent ideas must arrive in the market manger at precisely the same moment as the consumer's appetites bring them to the trough. But you must avoid getting there ahead of them. Leading the furniture design fashion parade may yield only ego-soothing unguents to the bruising failures in finding the grail, the shining bottom line. I now speak not only from the experience of an adolescent designer who survived the Great Depression that started in 1929, but I find reinforcement from the chorus of experts from Harvard, Princeton, and Columbia and others who are now busily forecasting the continued decline of the middle class in our country. A circumstance which, if they are right, brings me to the stirring hint I have for you tonight. Study yuppies. We were all yuppies once, as the vernacular had it, and those of you who are still youthful are yuppies now. If I were still active in your profession, I would currently concentrate on a collection of household furniture specifically to fill the needs, their down-to-earth dreams, of the present generation of yuppies. Only the name is new. 4+ decades ago, we brought out at Dunbar the first of several successive collections of things of good quality aimed at modest pocketbooks, which we called New Career, with just this kind of customer in mind. Let's consider some of their group characteristics, then and now. 1. Only this one is perhaps new, or is it? They cohabit, whether married or not, and they both work. Approaching or just past 30, they are trying to cash in on their increasingly expensive educations. 2, they have put off having children, or at least they've tried to. 3, for some time now, they have realized that their combined incomes will not match in providing the affluent style of living achieved by their parents. 4, They can afford or find only part-time household help, if any. In my area of the Northeast, this meager assistance costs from $9 to $16 per hour for one helper. 5, their pragmatic outlook will not relate to reinterpretations of the past or established furniture fashions, no matter how beautiful, partly because their parents had them. They aren't real, you see. What are their alternatives? An assemblage of modern classics, even if they can afford them? Gibbing, that's Rothschild Gibbings, back in the early 60s, sneeringly called that dodge tremendously trendy. While an acid architecture critic of the New York Times dismissed such timidity as predictable banality. In towns of any size, our yuppies can find the pungent opportunity lurking in a flea market. One not to be sneezed at, if you'll forgive the pun. Yet camp decorating, in a phrase excerpted from somewhere, is the living end of living. Or mockery is the last remaining lifestyle, a term, in my view, which belongs in a flea market. Finally, but not for long, will these young people be amused by imported furniture fantasies that resemble colorful top toys for grown-ups. 6, the broad range of these clear-eyed, if disillusioned members of yuppiedom will see that the vaunted upward mobility implicit in their title may be more fiction than fact. The toll of inflation, the constriction of jobs, cushy or non-cushy, as the aftermath of the merger mania, which shows little sign of abatement, the overpriced housing market, the resulting condominium explosion, and the popular fall guy, cheaper imports, etc. These and other considerations will determine the characteristics their furniture should have. It will have to be comfortable to use, with no obeisance paid to nostalgia. It will have to anticipate true needs and conveniences. C, of course, it will utilize contemporary as well as untried new materials and techniques of production. See the October Scientific American. I tried to read it, I couldn't understand it. But 19 writers describe new materials and techniques, mostly based on synthesis, which will stop us, I suppose, in the future from cutting down our forests. It will, or exhausting our oil resources. It will have to be easy to care for. And last, it will have to be honest value at, or not too far above, a moderate price. And so, what's new, for heaven's sake? And what will the furniture designed to please these cynics, these yuppies, look like? That, my friends, is for you to envision. Postscript. Before class is dismissed, I want to recommend a book to you. This one. Home, A Short History of an Idea, by Witold Rybczynski, a professor of architecture at McGill University in Montreal. It was published this year by Viking in the United States, and if you pay retail prices for your books, it costs $16.95. It's absolutely, well, it's amusing, it's historical. I learned all kinds of things about the filth of past century living. I'm talking about real dirt. But the final 2 chapters, which I hadn't finished until I was on the plane this morning, that's the reason the underlined lines are so wiggly. I really, instead of writing this stuff, should have read those 2 last chapters to you tonight. Thank you very much.